I would like to call to order the regular meeting of the Parks and Recreation Commission for Wednesday, June 28th, 2023. May I have the roll call, please?
Chair McGill,
Here.
Vice Chair Feck,
Here.
Commissioner Aldana,
Present.
Commissioner Chang,
Present.
Commissioner Clark, Commissioner Lesnar Buxton,
Hugh.
Commissioner Anander LaBerge.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. LeBlanc, do we have any changes to the agenda?
No changes.
Okay, thanks. And I didn't see any written public comment. Do we have anything that's come in? Okay, that brings us to general public comment. Any member of the public may address the commission for up to 2 minutes on any subject within the jurisdiction of the commission that is not scheduled for a public discussion before the commission. The total amount of time for public comment will be 15 minutes. And we have one speaker slip, and it is Mr. Brandon Miller. And if you will come forward when the little thing starts, you will have 2 minutes. Oh, come on up. You'll have 2 minutes when the clock starts.
Okay, definitely not going to take 15 minutes.
No, you get 2 minutes.
2 minutes, I was going to say, sorry about that. 2 minutes, real quick. Opportunity, I'm here and to, talk about opportunity and change. Park and Recs and kids and like troubled teens is something where I came from. And like, I wish that there were more people with the mindset that I have now, like to help kids out. And like, I think there should be like more like opportunity for people like myself that need second chances. Cause like 4 years ago I was on probation, and ever since then I was on the streets and stuff like that. And I really love like kids, like my son plays baseball and stuff like that. And like, it's sad that I can't speak to kids or do anything like that because I have like a felony or whatever. And it's like, I think there's like kids out there that deserve like a good talking to and a coach that like has been through some life experiences also. And like opportunities for people like myself to like maybe coach a team of like troubled kids or people like that are out at the boys club or whatever, you know what I mean? Because I'm like just inspired about the community and change, and I see like all these kids out there, and I don't think there's like the opportunity for them like to grow if they've been subjected to people that have like their moms are incarcerated or dads are incarcerated, you know what I mean? Most likely they're not going to try to play a sport because they're going to see that kind of team. But I got 30 seconds, but I think they need to know that there's a different kind of team and someone to tell them that they can go a different way, because like there could have been a time that I could have been great, but I went the other way. And if I had someone to talk to me like I am now, probably wouldn't have done that. So I think there needs to be more opportunity and like sign-up sheets for people that actually want to do good for actually being good, and not like for money or clout or nothing like that. You know what I mean? Because it's not about us, it's about them. And I think the Parks and Rec is the best place to do that with. So, blessings.
Thank you very much. I guess what I would suggest, off the cuff, well, I'm just going to suggest,
Yeah, because
I don't even know where to, but obviously you have some passion for what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And would you be willing to have someone have a conversation about what volunteer or what possibilities might exist? This is Jasmine LeBlanc, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah, hi. I would recommend that you look at our website and see if there's anything that kind of jumps out at you on the volunteer page, and even if not, give us a call.
Okay.
And we can look and see what might be a good fit.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay.
I
Thank you
appreciate
very
it.
much. Thank you.
Can I just say one thing? If you have your contact info, just pass it on right now.
Okay, yeah. Actually, you need, okay, it's on there?
Your phone number's on here.
Please, give me a call or a text, or is there a website that I can go to?
If you go into the city website, you can find the Parks and Recreation Department there.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Like, I've also worked with like Santa Barbara Act and stuff like that. It's just like, I'm all about giving back, because, you know what I mean?
Okay.
Trying to get there.
Thank you. All right. Thanks very much. Okay, that brings me to the Commissioner Committee assignment reports, and I'm going to start with Commissioner Chang this time.
Nothing to report. Passionate golfers are, there was a report in the subcommittee by people associated with operating the golf course, but there are no major updates coming from that. Everything seems to be working, no complaints.
Great, thank you. Yeah, it continues to be a success story. Commissioner Aldana.
Okay, there was no Neighborhood Advisory Council meeting again. But today I did attend a annual Recycle Water class meeting and tour of the El Estero water treatment plant. And it just showed how all the recycled water is used at the golf course also. Saw pictures of the big storage they have there. I work for a property that receives recycled water, so I was their representative. It was very informative, very nice.
Thank you, yeah. Commissioner Lesnar Buxton.
I did not attend the youth council this month.
Yeah, are they even having them right now? Because it's summertime. Yeah,
I am not certain.
yeah, I guess they're not, yeah. Vice Chair Feck.
Youth Council is on summer vacation, so I didn't attend their
Yeah.
meetings. I don't think they start up till August.
That's what I thought, yeah, they usually take a couple months off. Okay, well, let's see, the budget meeting last month with City Council, Parks and Rec budget meeting with City Council was the day after, I believe it was the day after our last meeting, and I did attend that. A great presentation. I spoke on behalf of the commission, and I imagine you'll update as we go forward. And then we also had a Park Foundation meeting last week where we, I think, basically finished reviewing the bylaws. They just need approval now. And we processed a very important check approval for the 4th of July celebration next week. So the show may go on. And that's it. All right. Do we have any commission and staff communications?
We do not.
Okay, thanks. And I understand we have one ceremonial item?
Yes, Chair McGill and Commissioners, I'm excited to share that Simone Herrera, our Parks Manager, received his 10-year service award this month. He, as many of you know, came to us from working in golf courses for many years and worked in our golf course and helped us to successfully transition that course operation over to an outside partnership, at which time he came into our department to work with a focus on our parkways and medians around the city. Since then, he was able to transition to being a supervisor over several of our park crews, especially on the north side parks. And for the last year, he has been our parks manager, serving in oversight role across all of our parks. So very happy to have him in our team. He's really a wonderful addition, and proud to see that he's served 10 years with us.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry that Mr. Herrera is not here for me to congratulate him in person. The way he carries himself, I would have thought he'd been around a lot longer than 10 years. He seems to be just very, very much embedded in the tapestry of Parks and Recreation, and it's always interesting to hear what he has to say about how he is handling the many challenges and opportunities in maintaining our parks. So please pass on our congratulations. Okay, and that takes us to our consent items. We have the summary of council actions. Anything there? I'm not, anybody have any questions or comments to any of those? I do not, myself. And then minutes. The recommendation is that the commission waive the reading and approve the minutes of the regular meeting of May 24th. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we waive the reading of the minutes from May 24th.
I'll second.
Okay, great. We have a motion, we have a second, and now we can have the voting screen. Are we there? Oh, we have a, is everybody locked? Okay, great. Okay, the motion passes. All right, that brings us to trees. Mr. Slack, welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair McGill and Commissioners. The first Street Tree Advisory Committee recommendation for review is the request to remove 4 trees. These are essentially street trees located within the public right-of-way. The address is 2500 McCaw, but to be a little bit more precise, they're basically at the intersection of Stanley Avenue and Las Positas. The applicant is Public Works, and they're requesting the removal of 2 eucalyptus, 1 small coast live oak, and a water gum. The Public Works is putting in some pedestrian improvements, and in that specific location at Stanley and Las Positas are putting in a pedestrian crossing. And now with pedestrian crossings, they use these flashing beacons that are in advance of the actual crosswalk. And so the placement of the proposed flashing beacon in this specific location, the trees are in direct conflict with that sightline visibility. So they've applied to have these trees removed specifically and solely due to the sightline conflict with the pedestrian improvements, and proposed to plant 8 new trees. Those trees will all be the designated species located within the project vicinity. The committee reviewed the application, the trees, the trees were in okay shape. They're kind of power lines over there, so they look a little funky. The rationale and the arguments for sightline were pretty straightforward, and the committee voted unanimously to approve the application as proposed.
Okay, thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Slack? Commissioner, is that a,
Yeah.
I'm not, for some reason, I'm not getting my little request to speak.
Yeah, I can't,
It's not popping up on my screen.
but I do have a question.
Okay, well, we'll do it the old-fashioned way today. Commissioner Aldana.
Okay, when you plant the 8 trees, are you going to keep it a little distance away from the power lines? This way they grow properly?
Chair McGill and Commissioner Aldana, I think we'll probably look at modifying the designation so that we have multiple species. The current species designation gets a little tall, so I think what we would do is go back to the committee, talk about it, and come up with something that's more utility friendly for that side of the street. But the plantings will be, I'm not sure the cardinal direction, but closer towards the school. So there's quite a bit of parkway that way, so they will be under the utility lines. So we'll make a modification so that they're not, a super tall vertical tree.
Okay, if I could just make a recommendation, just to keep them away from the power lines. I'm getting tired of seeing hacked trees.
You have a thing for those, don't you? Anybody else have any questions? Was there any, I do have one, was there any conversation about being able to save the coast live oak, or was that just really badly in terms of the sight line?
Chair McGill and Commissioners, yeah, it was in direct conflict with
Yeah.
the sight line, and really it appeared to be sort of like a naturally germinated, probably acorn. It's super close to the other trees, so trying to relocate it or something like that would just be not feasible.
Okay, yeah. All right, if there are no other questions, and I'm going to have to do this. I don't have any speaker slips. Do we have anybody online? All right. With that, I'm open to discussion and/or a motion. I would say that another crosswalk in Las Positas seems like a really good idea, and a flashing light, good God, how would you even dare cross that street without it? So I am prepared to make a motion that we approve the recommendation for the removal of the 2 eucalyptus and the coast live oak and the water gum on 2500 McCaw Avenue on the condition that the 8 new street trees are planted.
I'll second.
All right. We have a motion, a second. All in favor? Or vote. I guess it's not in favor, but just vote. Okay, great, thank you very much. Lucinda Lane.
Chair McGill and Commissioners, the next item is the request to remove 3 Aleppo pines. These are all street trees, also planted in the public right-of-way at 3230 Lucinda Lane. There were a few different reasons listed on the application for removal. A lot of it had to do with debris, some hardscape damage, and then specifically the tree closest to the mailbox. The applicant stated had a really pronounced lean. There was some concerns with fire as a result of the debris as well. The committee looked at the trees. They noted they were all in, say good shape overall, so to fair to good shape. The tree closest to the driveway did have some very subtle, like browning of the tips, and there was general consensus that that probably was indicative of some fungal activity that we see pretty common on pines all throughout town. It wasn't present on the other 2, and then if you're able to make a site visit, there's actually a really large, very healthy Aleppo pine directly adjacent to the one that was leaning closest to the driveway as well. And there were comments that if there was any grounds for approval, that would really be the only tree, given the conflict with the existing tree and the front setback, and also that very subtle sort of evidence of decline, likely due to fungal pathogen activity. The committee looked at the other 2 trees. There were really no issues, no evidence of any fungal activity. After on-site discussion, they agreed that given the size and health of the tree and the front setback and the conflict with the tree that had, again, some subtle evidence of decline and its pronounced lean, to recommend approval of that tree, so the tree closest to the driveway, the leaning tree, and denial of the other 2 street trees at 3230 Lucinda Lane.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah, I do. So I did have a clarification, because when it said the tree closest to the driveway, there are 2 of them that are pretty much equidistant to the driveway, which is like right on it. So I was thinking it was the one leaning, but so it is the one leaning that's recommended for approval. Okay. That fungal infection, is it contagious to, oh, it's working great. Is it contagious to the nearby trees? I mean, is this something that next year the same thing's going to be showing up?
And Chair McGill and Commissioners, it's likely that would be the case. I think when you look at sort of staff's perspective managing, 36,000 trees, that's not something that we would necessarily take action on, but I think it is a concern, and that I think certainly played a factor into the committee's recommendation to go ahead and approve the removal. If the homeowner was really motivated to take that specific tree out, that was a big factor in the decision making, was to try to preserve the other 3 trees that are on site.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Commissioner Chang.
So to be clear, the one with the issues is the one closest, as the one that it was called out by the homeowner as causing sidewalk and driveway damage?
Chair McGill and Commissioner Chang, that is correct.
Okay, if there are no further questions, I do not have a speaker slip. Do we have anybody online? Okay, thank you. So with that, I'm prepared for discussion or a motion as appropriate.
I'd be willing to make the motion to concur with the street tree advisory committee and do as we just discussed.
Nice one.
A quick rope-a-dope.
Commissioner Chang, were you going to discuss, or were you getting ready to make a motion?
I was going to continue discussing, but
Okay, are you willing to park the motion for a second?
Why don't we get a second, and he can discuss after the second.
I will second.
Okay.
All right, so let's have some discussion. Commissioner Chang.
so it kind of feels like we're looking for, they were just kind of looking for reasons to cut it down. Like none of the reasons offered are, noted as typical reasons. But I mean, do we have any additional context around, you kind of addressed this in your question, but like how quickly this spreads? I mean, and how certain they are that this is the reason for why the tree isn't doing so well?
Mr. Slack?
Chairman Gill and Commissioner Chang, I would say like, given the experience on the committee, and also my personal professional experience, I think we're pretty confident that that's what we see. I think you can, as you start to pay attention more and more, not just to this species, but just conifers throughout the community, it's pretty evident that many of them are struggling. For example, the one at the University Club along Santa Barbara Street, that's been a prominent stone pine for years, and that's rapidly succumbing to the same sort of like pathogen activity that we see. So I think it's pretty confident that that's what's going on, and pretty sound and rational to make that argument that you could elect to remove it in the interest of trying to reduce the, just spore activity and the probability of it spreading to the neighboring trees.
Got it, and that is a viable sort of prophylactic action that you can use for trees in terms of its
Chair
spread.
McGill and Commissioner Chang, in this specific instance, I would say there is a level of efficacy. Certain other insects like an aphid, certainly you wouldn't cut a tree down for that because there's really no controls. But reducing one tree to save these three with what we kind of know about beetle activity and fungal pathogen and that relationship, it does make sense.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Great. So if there is no further discussion, shall we go to a vote? Okay. Oh, that's my turn, not turn. Okay. Okay. All right, and the motion passes. And now we are on Owen Road.
Chair McGill and Commissioners, the next item for review is the request to remove one single blue gum eucalyptus located at 505 Owen Road. The applicant essentially was requesting removal due to concerns with the tree failing. They provided some photo evidence, and I can speak directly to being out there and seeing the neighboring tree on the bottom half of the driveway failed during the winter storms. Our staff did respond to assist in clearing the road. And after having that happen, they felt concerned, wanted to try to avoid that happening again, and they're requesting removal. The committee reviewed the tree, noted it was in fair shape. It had recently had like some crown reduction done. They focused on I think there's the blue gum eucalyptus and the challenges that species can provide. And also there was a young, sort of naturally germinated oak tree that the applicant also drew attention to in terms of, I guess, offsetting the loss of the tree in the event that it was approved for removal. I think the committee saw that oak tree as favorable over the blue gum. They generally supported removal of the existing blue gum to make room for the coast live oak that was growing, in close proximity to the existing blue gum. In further discussions, after deciding to support the removal, there was agreement that in addition to approving the removal, that a tree should be planted in addition to the existing tree to offset that. Discussions about the location where the previous tree failed being a good location to plant another tree and further offset the existing blue gum. So after pretty extensive discussion, the committee recommended to approve the removal of the blue gum on the condition a new tree be planted that can achieve a minimum height of 30 feet at maturity, and recommended that the commission can make the findings that the principles of good forest management support the removal.
Okay, thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Slack? Commissioner Chang.
So, I mean, what is the estimated likelihood of this tree falling in the next storm, as sort of stated in the given reasoning by the applicant?
Chair McGill, Commissioner Chang, I think in order to objectively evaluate that, a private arborist would have to perform a pretty thorough risk evaluation on the tree. I think there's something to be said for it not falling over during the last storms. Certainly it's proven to be somewhat resilient. The crown reduction also plays a factor in, you know, reducing what we would refer to as like lever arm, you know, just the height of the tree and the loading and just the weight. So all of those things probably play towards reducing probability of failure, but really in order to objectively evaluate it, somebody would have to do a pretty thorough evaluation, which usually involves like a root crown excavation where you kind of dig around the base of the tree and try to get like a really good understanding of how functional those structural roots are on the eucalyptus.
Thank you. Anybody have any other questions? You have
I have more questions.
Okay, go for it.
I mean, in terms of general level of decline in the canopy, are there seasonal factors at play, or is this more of like a secular trend where it just tends to persist?
Chair McGill, Commissioner Chang, I think we've seen persistence within the blue gum species, likely a big result of just, you know, 10 years of chronic drought. You know, despite the rains this year, it's been, you know, 8 of the hottest years on record and very, very low annual rainfall. So I think it's hard to find a blue gum that looks really fantastic. There's some out there, but I'd say generally the decline's pretty consistent throughout the species. A lot of them are very old too. You know, they date back for decades, and you know, trees don't last forever either. So that certainly can play a factor in it.
Got it. And sort of final question, I promise.
It's okay.
How do you sort of determine the unit of value when you say a coast live oak has much more value to the urban forest?
Good question.
Chair McGill, Commissioner Chang, I think that there's general agreement amongst the committee, probably most of the population, and certainly the native plant proponents, that coast live oak is of significant more value due to it being a long-lived, you know, native species to the region. So I think it's often seen as favorable. If you were to look at, say, even valuation of landscape plants in terms from an appraisal perspective, like it's held in much higher regard than like a blue gum is. So those are like factors, I think, you know, but you can talk to people that think that blue gum is a great tree too, and does lots of good environmental work, and, you know, certainly has its place in Southern California. But in terms of the committee's review, and I think just when you look at the long-term benefit, the coast live oak is superior, certainly in the eyes of the committee.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks. I'm going to build on that a little bit. And we've had this conversation a little bit. I'm in my, I guess what am I, my 5 years, 6, I can't know, however long I've been on this commission. There seems to be a change in view of some of these trees where I would say 3 or 4 years ago, a healthy, mature tree, even if there was something growing up next to it, we would struggle to approve. The stack would struggle to approve. And it seems like things are changing either with our environment or with what's happened over the last year, where recommendations are shifting. And and I don't want to stray too far from this specific agenda item, and maybe we need to table this as a separate discussion. But to bring it back to this tree specifically, is there a change of view in overall, kind of holistically, towards things like the blue gum that are impacting these recommendations?
And Chair McGill and Commissioners, it's a good question. It's complicated. I think it kind of gets a little murky too when we are on the back end of several evergreen ash discussions. I think that certainly the existing oak tree plays a big factor in the decision making, I think, of the committee, certainly when looking at this specific property. I think that if we were to envision the same review without that tree being there, I think the conversation would be quite a bit different. Again, I think it falls back on the value of that species. You know, also when these oaks sort of like naturally germinate, they usually perform exceptionally well, you know, far exceeding like say something that's been brought in from like a nursery. And I think that's also seen as really favorable as well. I think that I don't want to say that the committee's like wholesale against the blue gum either, but it may be seen as a less desirable species when compared to, a coast live oak. And there can be value in creating space and encouraging new development of a young tree in lieu of a tree that may not have as many years left in terms of long-term potential. I'm just trying to sort of like surmise the discussion that took place on site when we were looking at the trees.
Okay, yeah, thanks. How old is that oak tree? I mean, obviously, roughly.
It would be hard for me to
Yeah.
guess, to be honest with you.
Okay. Okay, thanks. I think we may need to have an agenda item at some point, just to have a more holistic conversation about how as this forest matures, things are evolving.
And if I could, real quick, Chairman Gill and Commissioners, certainly, it's happened before. A committee recommendation does not, the commission can absolutely not agree with a committee recommendation, right?
Correct. All right, with that, I don't have any speaker slips. Do we have anybody online? With that, I'm open for discussion and/or a motion. Anybody care to jump in?
I'll make a motion that we agree with the Street Tree Advisory Committee and approve the removal of the blue gum at 5050 Owen Road, and with the condition that they replace with a new tree that can achieve a minimum height of 30 feet at maturity.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right. Any discussion? All right, I'm seeing people voting, so we're going to go ahead and vote. That's quite all right. I think we were there. Okay. We have a pass. And that takes us to our final tree, which is on Prospect Avenue.
Chair McGill and Commissioners, last item for review is the request to remove an Indian laurel fig. This is located within the front setback at 1759 Prospect Avenue. The applicant listed a few different reasons for removal. The big one was hardscape damage. The sidewalk, the driveway, their walkway is all pretty lifted up going towards the home. In addition to that, they referenced the tree being lopsided due to utility pruning, which this has been going on for decades, debris concerns with both the fruiting and the leaf drop as well, and kind of just a desire to stop maintaining such a large shade tree. The committee reviewed the tree. There was consensus it was in really good health. It has been utility pruned, but it's also one of the toughest trees on planet Earth, so it's really not, too impacted by that aside from aesthetics, Most of the conversation revolved around could the repairs to the garage and all of the concrete be done while still retaining the tree. We were on site for a pretty significant amount of time. There were some differing opinions. The majority of the members agreed that the tree could be retained while still making all the necessary repairs if the homeowner elected to do so. And after review, voted 2-1 to deny the application for the removal of the Indian laurel fig at 1759 Prospect Avenue.
Okay, I'm opening it for questions, and Commissioner Chang.
Yeah, can you tell me about the sole dissenting vote? And sort of, the reasons for why they agreed with they wanted to cut it down?
Chair McGill, Commissioner Chang, I would say it was fairly reluctant, recognizing like the size of the tree. I think that member did not feel that there was like a high probability of being able to make all the repairs with the significant disruptions present without causing like detrimental damage to the tree. And that was really the sort of the driving factor.
Commissioner Aldana.
Yes. And I tend to agree with that, because if you look at the sidewalk, I did not go to this address, but right there by the garage is a massive uplifting, correct?
Chair McGill and Commissioner Aldana, yeah, the hardscape disruption there is pretty significant.
Yeah.
The sidewalk's quite flat, surprisingly, but the driveway is raised up probably a few feet, and the garage door is crooked. It's pretty significant in certain sections where the tree's present.
So, yeah, I mean, we did go to look at the tree yesterday, and that sidewalk lift is, kind of seismic. Is that definitely due to the tree?
Chair McGill and Commissioners, almost assuredly.
Okay.
It was really hard to see, but when we were there, there were large roots in the parkway too that had grown under the sidewalk and kind of over where that power pole is, visible. Essentially, nothing else could cause that level of disruption. I'm a big fan of Indian laurel fig, but it has its bad reputation for, pushing pavement around, displacing sidewalks and curb and gutter. And almost assuredly, all or significant amount of the hardscape damage is due to just root expansion.
Yeah. So, and then it was hard to see what the damage was. It's the actual write-up says damage to house and garage. I mean, you kind of look down that big hill. It was hard to see what damage, if any, was being done to the house, and I wasn't sure about the garage. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit on that?
And Chair McGill, Commissioners, I think when you look at just the pitch of the entryway from the garage, the concrete into the garage, just a steep slope, that's a factor. The garage door has a gap, probably an inch or more too, just from the pressure of the concrete pressing up. I would have to agree with you. They didn't provide any specific evidence about the house. A tree of that size over the roof, just the amount of leaf litter and accumulation, they could easily be saying that that's what's causing the damage, but there was nothing specific provided. And I'm not a structural engineer, so I can't tell you the magnitude of damage to the garage, but it definitely didn't look to be in great shape.
Okay. But even if the tree was removed, there would still be a downhill cant into that garage. I mean, there's basic topography there. Yeah, is that correct or not?
And Chair McGill and Commissioners, that's entirely correct. Without
Yeah.
fixing the hardscape, the disruption would be present, in perpetuity.
Okay. A tough one. Vice Chair Feck.
Do you know if there's any water lines or anything that also would be affected in that area if just left alone, plumbing or anything like that?
And Chair McGill, Commissioner Feck, we kind of have to rely on the applicant to give us that information. They didn't express any concern or provide any evidence that water line or sewer line was a factor. It may be that in this case the sewer line maybe exits the rear of the home. That's not terribly uncommon in areas like this as well. And really, I think if nothing's happened, it's probably pretty safe to assume that nothing else probably will happen given the age and the size of the tree. Most of the roots in that general area are kind of done, expanding in girth.
Okay, so one more question from me, and then I'll go to the public speakers unless somebody else has a question. In terms of remediating the damage without removing the tree, what would that entail and what would it do to the tree?
Chair McGill, Commissioners, you would have to demo all of the surrounding concrete and then just objectively evaluate, how significant and to what extent you would have to do root pruning in order to fix a site. It's very similar to us working with sidewalks. We say that we can't make any decisions until the sidewalk's been removed and you can actually see the roots. Sometimes it's unbelievable the amount of roots that cause it, and then sometimes it's wildly surprising how one root can cause so much damage. So it's really tough to say. The species itself, from a species profile perspective, lends itself to very high levels of tolerance to root pruning. I would draw attention to milpas. Those trees have been root pruned, several times due to being, shoehorned in very small spaces with curbs and sidewalks and the road right there. and they tolerate it exceptionally well. So if there was ever a species that was going to be able to handle, you know, pretty significant root pruning to make repairs, it's probably this species of tree.
Okay. Nothing's lighting up here, so I'm going to go to comment. I don't have speaker slip. Do we have anybody commenting? All righty. I would like to open it up for discussion and/or a motion. Commissioner Aldana.
Yes, I tend to want to disagree with the committee and give this homeowner another chance. So with that said, it would be with prejudice if a motion was to be made. I mean, to give the person another chance to explain himself, because this is, for one, you're going to go through, you're going to save the tree, and again, we got the utility lines. The tree's not going to grow properly, and this person just wants to improve his property.
So just help me understand.
I would like to give the property owner another chance to go round two, you know.
So are you suggesting deny without prejudice?
Correct.
And the without prejudice would be to do what?
Let the homeowner have a second chance without paying the fee.
Okay, so that would be bringing in an arborist report or what would, excuse me, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Slack. If a deny without prejudice, what would the homeowner need to provide to change a decision? You know, what additional information could they reasonably bring to the table?
Chair McGill and Commissioners, I think if there was consensus amongst the commissioners that to deny the application without prejudice, the commission, you know, and via the Street Tree Advisory Committee, there would have to be some type of compelling evidence to support the removal of the tree. So I think that about all you could do is have an arborist report that would speak to that. But that may or may not really answer the questions that you have either. So I'm not sure. It really would be up to the commission to make the determination. I think a lot of times when there are denial without prejudice, there's a more clear-cut reason to kind of send it back either for more information or more discovery. In this specific instance, it may be difficult to get an arborist report that has really compelling evidence to support the removal, but I don't know either.
Yeah, I'm not surprised that that's how you're answering that. You know, and I guess what I'm struggling with.
What about a homeowner's insurance report? I mean, because I don't think the homeowners, I mean, the insurance is not going to like what they're seeing here.
Yeah, I can't speak. I can't speak that. I don't know if you can.
So I would love to give the homeowner a chance to talk to the insurance and make heads or tails of it. So as far as myself, I'd like to make a motion to deny the Street Tree Advisory's recommendation.
Okay, so what I am hearing you say, and I would like to have some further discussion. We can either do that with or without a second, but what I'm hearing you say, and correct me if I'm wrong, is I'm hearing you want to make a motion to disagree with the Street Tree Advisory Committee and approve the removal, is what I'm actually hearing you say. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second to that? Okay, so we have a motion and we have a second to disagree with the Street Tree Advisory Committee and approve the removal of the setback tree at Prospect Avenue. So now we need to have discussion, and unless the motion is rescinded, we'll vote on that motion.
Do we need a second before we
have
continue?
a second. Yeah,
Okay.
Commissioner Lester Buxton seconded.
Okay.
So I guess I'll kick off the discussion because I think I understand the struggle on this table. And again, it's going to come down to me, it comes down to, that's a gorgeous tree. You know, there's no And it obviously should be taking over the universe because it's obviously a quite resilient tree. What I struggled with, and I couldn't see it, so that's why I asked the questions about the structural damage. Generally, if again, my history with this commission, when it's really pretty well certain that a tree is causing significant, not sidewalk lifting, but actual structural damage to the physical property, a house, a garage, generally that's been pretty important in our decision-making. And that's where I'm seeing a little bit of, that's where I'm having a personal conflict with the beauty of the tree and the reality that we're talking about structural damage to a residence, which normally we would consider grounds for removal, in my experience. And we have a request from Vice Chair Feck.
Just clarification, so has any root pruning been done, or like anything like those preventative measures at all, or is that just, was it kind of a suggestion to the homeowner?
And Chair McGill, Commissioner Feck, it didn't appear that anything's been done. The concrete on site looks to be super old. Not an expert, but it does look, really old, probably original or really close. So I don't think there's really been any root pruning done to the tree. And then I think to kind of talk about some of the committee's discussion, that was very similar to Chair McGill's comments. There were some comments about this being like the only big tree on the street, things like that, and that was part of the decision making. And then just to provide a little bit more detail, the two that voted to deny the application also had very similar comments to Chair McGill, that there's really been no attempt or effort made to fix the damage that's present either. So, the cost to remove the tree is significant, the loss of the tree is significant, and you still have to fix the hardscape. So that was sort of, I guess, to provide a little bit more background into some of the discussion that was had on site with the committee members.
Thank you. Commissioner Chang.
Is the implication of the committee's recommendation that root pruning will occur?
Chair McGill, Commissioner Feck, the majority of the members' recommendation was that the tree could be retained even in the event that repairs were made to the surrounding hardscape and structure. So yes. It would be up to the applicant to go through like the building permit process and get an encroachment permit and do all of those things that are necessary before they could even go down that path. But again, the committee's consensus was that the tree could be retained even during all of that work taking place.
Okay, Commissioner Aldana.
Okay, as you look at the tree, you can see how wide spanned it is. So you can see how big it should be, but due to the electrical wires, this tree will never grow to its capacity. It's going to continue to be chopped and chopped and chopped. So, and that is another reason why I disagree.
Unfortunately, I don't think we can do much about the fact that this is a city full of electrical wires. But yes. Okay, do we have any other discussion? And I have not heard anything to change the motion, so we do have a motion and a second to approve the removal of the tree on Prospect. I think, are we at the point? I think we're at the point where we just need to go to vote and see where we are. Shall we? Oh, God. Okay. The motion carries. All right, and now we are on master plan.
Chair McGill and Commissioners, the next item is just a designation change for the 100 to 400 blocks of South Milpas. We recently reviewed a project that involves a widening of South Milpas that involves the removal of some trees. During that review, we had a request from the committee to bring the existing street tree designations back, take a look at them, and evaluate them for modification. So we did that at last month's meeting. Originally, there was 2 designations for 2 separate blocks. That was the New Zealand Christmas tree, which does occur quite often along the coast in Santa Barbara, and then also the paper bark tree, which is pretty coastally tolerant as well. There was quite a bit of discussion about what made sense, what could do well with the coastal pressure, while continuing to build on like our utility as decision makers for making intelligent decisions about smaller spaces where we can put a tree, and then utilizing bigger spaces when available, all while trying to like maximize biodiversity. And after a review, the committee recommends designating New Zealand Christmas tree, the golden trumpet tree, the gold markhamia, and Torwood gum for the 100 to 400 blocks of South Milpas Street.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Slack?
One.
Okay, Commissioner Aldana?
So this is south of the freeway, correct? To the beach?
Chair McGill and Commissioner O'Donnell, that's correct.
Any other questions? Okay, I have no speaker slips. Do we have anybody to speak? With that, I will, for any discussion or a motion? I'm prepared to make a motion that we approve the change to the street master plan for the 100 to 400 block of South Milpas to include the New Zealand Christmas tree, golden trumpet tree, golden markhamia, and the Torwood gum. Did I get them all?
I'll second.
Okay. Discussion? Shall we vote? All right, motion passes, and that takes us to Shoreline Drive.
Chair McGill, Commissioners, the last item, this is also a designation change. It's the 300 to 1,100 blocks of Shoreline Drive. It's essentially from like Los Baños Pool to where you start going up the hill towards like Shoreline Park proper. There's planting space on both sides of the street, but then there's the prominent median that runs through there that currently has a lot of Mexican fan palms and some windmill palms. We've been in possession, staff started them probably 20 years ago, of these Chilean wine palms, and we've been kind of desperately trying to find like a suitable location for them, and we kind of envisioned Shoreline Drive as being a good location to utilize that species. It's a pretty unique palm species, probably one of the most prominent ones in town. Is just across the street from the Mission. They have this super big, thick trunks. It takes like 100 years for them to get like that, but it's a really neat palm species. So we wanted to utilize that in this specific location, consulted some palm experts like down in the LA area if it would be suitable, and they were generally supportive. And during the discussions, we talked about, again, trying to build in a little bit more biodiversity, and having like kind of an interesting conglomerate of palms does work pretty well, even in a median setting. So instead of just relying on a couple, we kind of went for it here and designated several relatively unique palm species for use in these specific blocks of Shoreline Drive. So after review, the committee recommends the use of Guadalupe palm, the Pindo palm, the Quintia palm, the windmill palm, the Chinese fan palm, the Australia cabbage palm, and then lastly the Chilean wine palm for use in the 3 to 1,100 blocks of Shoreline Drive.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
Yes.
Commissioner Aldana?
Well, myself, I love palms, but I have heard you say that the department doesn't really care for the palms because you have to trim them every 2 years. So you're going to put these, you want to install these palms, will you be able to maintain them?
Good question.
Trim them every 2 years?
And Chair McGill, Commissioner Aldana, I think especially when we look at like that 2-year mark, we're kind of like dialing into queen palms, just so it's like a specific palm that requires that high level of maintenance. These palms don't require that high level of frequency. I think you will continue to see our program push for shade trees in almost all settings. This is one of these unique areas where, you know, the palm kind of works. It's a consistent theme all down Cabrillo Boulevard. You know, in the near future, you'll see us bringing a residential street that has nothing but palms on it and changing that to shade trees. So I don't think that that's going to stop. This just happens to be one of these really unique, isolated examples where, you know, utilization of palms still makes sense.
And that many different species won't end up looking higgly-piggly? That's a technical term, by the way.
And Chair McGill and Commissioners, I do not believe so.
Yeah. And the Chilean date palm won't get too big? It went, in 100 years when we're all in hovercraft, well, our descendants,
It'll do well.
yeah.
Well, as I mentioned, I love palms, so I would like to go ahead and make the motion to agree with the street tree master plan species designed for this change.
And hold that thought, and we can take the second, but before, we need to make sure we have no public comment. Okay, go on.
I will second.
Okay. Discussion? Vote? All right, great. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Slack. And that takes us to our director's report. Ms. LeBlanc.
Chair McGill and Commissioners, I have several items to report that have happened in the last few weeks. The first is that we've had another large-scale trail volunteer work day that occurred earlier this month. We had 85 volunteers come out and do trail maintenance work on 3 trails in the area: Cold Spring, the Ridge Trail, and Buena Vista Trails. They were able to cover about 2 miles of trails, doing a range of things on those trails, including brushing, removing debris, and so on. We anticipate that the next large-scale trail maintenance day, where we'll be looking for volunteers, will be towards the end of September to coincide with National Public Lands Day. We also have been working hard at work on our open space vegetation management. So every year, the park spaces that we have that are in designated high fire hazard areas require treatment, where we remove vegetation near homes and other spaces that need to be protected. We have 16 parks that need this kind of work done, and it generally occurs during May and June. This year, there's so much vegetation that it's extending a little bit into July. It totals about 37 acres of land. And this work typically has been achieved through mechanical, human-powered efforts, so mowing and weed whipping predominantly. And we are excited that this year we incorporated another method of reducing fuels through a herd of sheep, which have been deployed. They're going to be deployed at a total of 5 parks around the city. They're currently at Mission Historical Park, moving on to Laurel Canyon later this week. It's a nice way to get the work done in a way that actually is sort of less invasive, in a sense, more of a natural strategy for this type of work, where we're looking for everything to be removed because the sheep are not selective. So they'll eat everything. We also have kicked off the Summer Nights program. So this was a 2-year pilot program. We're in the 2nd year. It's changed a little bit from last year. This year it's at the Boys and Girls Club. starting with several weeks at the West Side Boys and Girls Club, and then moving to the Downtown Boys and Girls Club later this month, later in July. So it's from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. on Fridays at the West Side through July 7th. It will move to the Downtown Boys and Girls Club July 14th through July 28th. We do not have funding in the budget for future years, so this is anticipated to be the last year of this program. And that rolls right into the department budget. The budget was approved as part of the citywide operating budget approval for fiscal years 24 and 25. That was approved earlier this month. The budget is essentially unchanged from what was presented to you in April. However, there are two fiscal year 24 budget additions that I'd like to point out. So one addition was to add funding back in for fiscal year 24 to provide the recreation after-school program at Monroe Elementary. So that was the site that staff had recommended we reduce out of the budget as part of our budget reduction targets that we were asked to make. And then in addition to that, a little bit less than $84,000 was added to our budget for youth programming for fiscal year 24. And that was not directed at a specific youth program. Monroe RAP registration will open tomorrow. So, and with that, I'm open for questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. LeBlanc. Anybody have any questions?
I got a comment.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just glad that the after-school programs were, the funding was found and placed.
Yeah, unfortunately, the Monroe one, I guess, is a dual-edged sword in terms of overall numbers of children that'll be served. Is that not correct?
Yeah, Chair McGill, yes, that was part of the reasoning for why that program was proposed for reductions. But we are hopeful that with opening up the registration tomorrow, there'll be interested families.
Yeah. So I know it's early days, but how's the Summer Nights program going this year? I know it's very early days, but
Yeah, so the report back from the first week was that things went well, kids were happy. I believe that it was approximately 30 children that participated last week, and that this Friday will be our second.
do you remember how that compares to La Cumbra last year?
Chair McGill, I think that there were nights where there were around 30 last year, and there were other nights where there were significantly higher numbers, but I couldn't tell you exactly how it compares to the first week.
Yeah, okay.
Last year.
Yeah, because I know that one of the rationales for changing was that La Cumbra was a bit of a challenging location for some people. Yeah. All right. The sheep are great fun. I mean, kids love them. So I think if there's no other questions, we can move on to what I believe is our final agenda item, which is the capital projects update.
Chair McGill and Commissioners, we have a brief presentation for you this afternoon on our capital projects that are underway. This presentation will focus on some of the projects that the Commission has not heard about recently, so therefore we won't spend a lot of time on the Dwight Murphy renovation or Ortega Park, but we'll really dive in to some of those projects that you've seen in the budget and haven't had a chance to get a lot of details on. So 3 of the 4 members of our capital projects and planning team are here to present on this item. The team members are Justin Van Mullum, our capital project supervisor, Sean Stewart, our project planner, and Kevin Strausberg, our project engineer. The team also includes Monique O'Connor, who is out of town right now and not be presenting. So with that, I am happy to turn it over to Sean, who will start us.
Welcome.
Hello, Chair McGill and Commissioners. I'll be starting out by covering the improvement project at Parque de los Niños. The objectives for this project were to activate an underutilized portion of the park and provide free outdoor fitness opportunities. So the image on the left of your screen is the before shot, and the images on the right are the types of fitness equipment selected for this project. In total, we installed 3 pieces of outdoor fitness equipment, 2 cardio climbers, and 1 multi-gym. Additionally, we replaced an old drinking fountain with a new model that also includes a water bottle filling station, and also addressed fence and walkway repairs in the park. This project was 100% funded through the Community Development Block Grant, and the total cost of the project was $79,000. So repairing the ornamental fencing in the park will take place after the 4th of July, but everything else has already been completed, and shown here is the installed fitness equipment and the new rubber safety surfacing. The equipment has been situated so that users can, while users exercise, they can also maintain a line of sight with their children playing in the playground, so they could supervise them at the same time. And that concludes it for this project, and I'm happy to answer any questions or turn it over to the next team member.
So what I'm going to suggest is that we hear the entire presentation and then make note of your questions as we go along, and then we'll just take all the questions at once.
Hello, I'm Kevin Strasberg, project engineer. I'm here to talk about the Alameda Bandstand renovation. The objective of the goal was to renovate the entire structure. Key elements were the roof replacement, wood rot repair, replace missing decorative wood trim, paint, steps, and waterproof flooring installation. The source of the funds was Community Development Block Grant, $220,000, and general funds. The overall project cost was $320,000. The status is it's going to be completed on Friday. Slide 1 here is the Victorian bandstand that was built in 1888. That's 135 years old. The project's object was to rehabilitate the entire structure. The last significant repair was about 40 years ago. Daylight was coming through the roof, and 4 of the 8 posts had to be replaced that had significant wood rot. Slide 2 shows the new roof, fish scale, beautiful repair job. You can see the paint. We looked back at the old colors, and we think we picked exactly what was repaired, the original kind of color, so we were very happy with that. And then also got the waterproof flooring. The other project that I'm going to talk about is the East Side Neighborhood Park renovation. Our objective here was to activate the park, just as we did at Park A, to reduce the misuse. The key elements are the 2 to 5 playground, the 5 to 12 playground, and then there's also going to be 7 pieces of fitness equipment that are spread throughout the park so that, again, you can have line of sight with your children if you're working out and they're in the playground. The playground will be fenced as well. It's not shown with the fence here. This was phase 1 that was done in 22, spending the grant money. And currently they're working on putting in the 5 to 12 and a pathway throughout the park so that you can have a walkway and a little exercise path. The block grant was $345,000. The total cost of the project was $745,000. The status will be complete by the end of August, and then following up, we'll be doing the community garden work in the end of 23. So the first slide here shows the 2 to 5 playground. We had multiple outreach meetings to establish the objectives here at the park. The neighborhood really wanted us to reduce the misuse, and by activating the park, we think that that will do so. And this photo, as I said, shows the 2 to 5. It will be getting a fence around it. The 5 to 12 will also be getting a fence around it. Slide 2 indicates, shows the rendering of the 5 to 12 playground that's going to be installed. It'll be closest to Soledad Street, and the 7 pieces of equipment will be located, you can see in the right side of the slide, left side of the slide, about where the cone is, and the other 2 will be marching down the path going to the other playground. This will give the people exercising, a nice place to exercise. They'll be able to see their kids on the playground. And phase 2 should be done by end of August. Phase 3, like I said, at the end of '23. And that's the end of my presentation.
Chair McGill, members of the commission. Before I start, my name is Justin Van Mullum, again, capital project supervisors. The last 3 projects that you saw were completely done in-house, which means that this group here were the only consultants working on the projects. We did the design work, the outreach, and the drawings and the permitting. So that's unique that we have that talent level within our project management groups. I just wanted to celebrate that. Now moving on, this is the Plaza Del Mar band shell, and to the left you have an existing photograph. This is a beautiful Spanish colonial band shell that was built in 1919. It looks on the outside like it is in good shape, but I assure you, if you've gone inside, that it is in desperate need of repair. It's a wood structure that the roof has outlived its life and really caused a lot of damage to this structure itself. If you look on the right-hand side, you really see it in its heyday. This was circa World War II, and you can see a lot of service members watching a full band. And our project goals for this is 1, to restore the building, but 2, to provide accessibility to the stage so everyone can use it, so it's inclusive, and also really to provide some modern amenities for it. So you could have something more like concerts in the park, where it has a more speakers, but that takes a little bit more power than what we have now, which is about the amperage that you'd need for a coffee pot. So we have a little bit of work there to do. Let me show you a little bit more about our proposed project. So this is elevation views. We currently have permits, building permits, and we've gone out to bid. We hope to start construction of this project in early August. Let's see. So this shows the ramp, which we've delicately hidden behind the building, the stage. So it wraps around the backside of the building and comes up to stage level. And you also see on the right-hand side that is that beautiful shell arch, and we're restoring all of the original paint colors. There, within the arch are several small globe-sized lights that used to be there, so we're restoring that as well. And of course, we'll also upgrade it so you'll have some stage lights and enough power for any band that you want to have play at this venue. Before I move on, there's some key elements that I wanted to go over, which is this was grant funded, and also funded by the American Rescue Plan that was part of COVID, and then also by city general funds, and it's a $1.3 million project. Here we have Casa Las Palmas, the Arbor. This building is in Chase Palm Park expansion, which is on the mountainside of Cabrillo Boulevard. It's a smaller venue for the Parks Department, but it has a very nice, large size patio that is underutilized and misused quite a bit. And as you can see in this photograph, we have a barrier set up that helps control misuse and also helps with our defined spaces for when we have camps that are out of use this building. So on the left and on the right, you have these two kind of more square block buildings that are, one is a concession building, one that's not currently used that much, and the other is a restroom that's used on a regular basis. And our objectives is to really define what the rentable space is, the patio, create more shade than these small trees that are struggling, and more safety lighting, and really define an entrance. There's all of these different stairs that come up to the patio, and then create more accessibility to this facility that currently we've got a path of travel that doesn't meet code, and parking that does not meet code. So our proposal is to create an arbor that is arched, that you can see that goes between those two block buildings, create a main entry that's centered, and then we'll have a low fencing that goes around this area that really can define the space and control the space. And then, of course, we have an updated accessible path of travel, and we're doing some upgrades to the concession stand as well to make it a little bit more usable for renters. The funding source is the city's former redevelopment agency. So there's still a little funding left over there. That this is one of the last projects that'll be funded through that. And if you recall, the Cabrillo Pavilion was also had partial funding through the redevelopment agency. And then the estimated cost of construction is approximately $700,000, and we expect bidding to start in the summer and hopefully construction late fall of this year. So I have two more projects to go over. This is the Cabrillo Gym, and it is located right next to the Cabrillo Recreation Center, and it's one of our hidden gems, no pun intended. It is set back from the street, and it was designed by the famous architect Julia Morgan, who also did Hearst Castle. It is a 3-story building, and on the top it has a full exterior court, a rooftop court. So our objectives for this project, it is a steel reinforced concrete building, which was on the cutting edge in 1926 when it was constructed, but it has not weathered that well. It has a lot of spalling, as you can see in the picture on the right-hand side. It's lost some of the details that are fallen off the building, and so our goal is to really work on the exterior and fix the concrete, paint the whole building, redo the court fencing, and waterproof the exterior rooftop court and the whole building, including the windows that need to be repaired. This building, as you can see, leaks like a sieve during the rain. And you can see that on the rooftop on the left-hand side, we've got pooling water that just ends up going down that wall. And on the right-hand side in the gym that's right below it. All of those containers are catching dripping water. And this has been going on a while, and then there's also a lot of rain that comes through the windows. So as I was saying, our overall goal is to really waterproof the building and renovate the exterior so we can maintain the interior, and for a later date to do more work with that. The funding source for this project is general funds, and the estimated cost of construction is $1.8 million. We have a building permit. We've had one for quite some time, and we are currently working with Public Works to get this project out to bid. Last but not least, here is the Louise Lowry Davis Center. So this building was built in 1926. It was part of the campus of the original Santa Barbara High School. It was the home economics building. And the original high school did not make it through the Santa Barbara earthquake, but this building held up well and was taken over by the Parks and Recreation Department, and has been used for several years for recreation, and more recently for more of a senior gathering location. The phase one of this project, as you can see in the photographs, was it was all exterior work, and it was to create more usable space. We did not have connectivity between our existing patio and the building. You had to walk out the front door, walk around, and it was very rarely used and mostly misused. So what we did is we created 2 doors where 2 windows were located, and a patio and a ramp that went down to a new pergola that is all fenced in and has a direct line of sight from our proposed administrative hub to the front door and to the pergola. We've also, what's not shown, is a pergola to our front door, which is located in the parking lot area, which used to be pretty hard to find, but now with the entry pergola is very easy. And then we removed the front door that was put in the 60s on the De La Guerra Street side, and replaced it with the window to match the historic elevations. That gives us more security and easier to run the facility for 1 or 2 city employees. So phase 2 was completed in 2021 for a cost of just over $700,000. I'm sorry, that was phase 1. Phase 2 is the interior renovation of the building. As you can see by the photo, we have a small, more recreation room. It's used a lot for knitting, crocheting, different games. And then on the right-hand side, that's the front door that you walk into, and that is our entry desk. So our overall goal with the interior is to create better circulation for programming inside, also better lighting, air conditioning, and to bring the windows up to today's code, dual glazing with the low E, because we know it's only getting warmer, and the single glazing that was put in the 70s makes it a pretty hot building. Here we have another photo of the interior. It shows you our larger gathering room, and you can see the low ceilings on this. One of our goals is to kind of open things up. The upper left-hand corner is a section of the building, so it shows the inside of what it would look like when you'd walk in the front door, and then the new entry desk, and then the connection from that hub to the new patio that has already been completed in phase one. And that's that pergola that I showed you the photograph of. And then on the bottom right-hand corner is that large gathering room that you just saw with the ceiling opened up, so it has a little bit more of height and gives it a little bit more sense of presence. So phase two is, we're basically right now working on phase two. We're doing some value engineering, and we hope to get it out to bid within the next 6 to 8 months. So that concludes the presentation. Ms.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you all three. Anybody have any questions or comments? I have a couple questions if. Commissioner Aldana?
Okay, let me see here. Regarding the east side neighborhood park, how high is the fence going to be around the play area?
The East Side Neighborhood Park, Chair McGill and Commissioner Aldana, the East Side Neighborhood Park, we have a code requirement that that fence be, is it 48 inches, 42 inches?
42.
So that's
Three and a half feet?
So that's the code that we've met, and it'll have gates as well that are self-closing.
Okay. Got it. And on the Chase Palm Park, you mentioned RDA funding, because I know the city had to give the money back to the state many years ago. How is it that you still have some funds?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Aldana. So if Director Zachary was here, she would probably tell this story better, but it was clawing the funding back, and there were certain projects that we were able to do that with, and there's a lot of time that went into that. So this, like I said previously, the Cabrillo Pavilion was one of those projects, and this is another one. And it's a unique project because we have the city of Santa Barbara has a contractual obligation to build the arbor that was part of the original agreement that was made with the Fess Parker family.
Chair McGill and Commissioner Aldana, just to add on to what Mr. Von Willem was saying, it was in the original park plan. And so I believe that is why the funding was able to be continued, because it was part of that design from the 90s.
Okay. Very good. And then also on the, I'm trying to get back to it, on the Alameda Park, 'cause I think the price was, what was the price? 300 and something thousand?
320.
320.
That's correct,
Yeah.
Commissioner
Eh,
Aldana.
What's the square footage on that? I mean, approximately
400 square feet. That's
400. I think you could, that was a little steep, wouldn't you say?
Commissioner Aldana, similar to the band shell, until you've really started to pull pieces of the wood off and really look at the structural system, you're quite surprised. Like Mr. Strasberg said, when you popped open the roof, there was basically no roof shingles left providing any waterproofing. The waterproofing on the floor had failed many years ago and sloped towards 4 of the posts that had to be completely replaced. So think about jacking up half of that building and replacing it. The finial that's on top was almost non-existent once you got a lift up there and had to be completely remade with epoxy wood putty. The list just goes on, and we were fortunate enough to call that out on our plans and didn't really have too many change orders.
All righty, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, well, I guess, yep, go ahead.
Is the Alameda, I know the band shell is rentable, I mean, not at the moment because it's under repairs, but is the Alameda gazebo going to be like a rentable space as well, like in the future?
Chair McGill, Vice Chair Fleck, absolutely. It'll be rentable space, just like the band shell will be eventually. We hope to see concerts within that park and trying to do a little bit more programming with nonprofits.
Okay, and then a follow-up question, just because I used to live over there, there was a lot of like not exactly the best activity that goes on when people are just kind of like loitering around or sleeping in the band shell or the gazebo area. Are there any like more security measures that were built into it to like lock up the stairs or like anything like that? And then with the band shell, knowing that we're putting more money into maybe like higher electrical and like lighting and speakers and things, is there going to be more, I guess, security around those areas to protect unwanted behavior?
Chair McGill, Vice Chair Fleck. So let me start with Alameda. So with Alameda Bandstand, we are looking at options on how to avoid misuse or people going up onto the bandstand. We will, of course, have our chain that goes across that says use by permit only, but we're also looking at other options that are more historically feasible for that structure. And then regarding the band shell, that building is a little different, a little bit more open, easier to see from the street. One of the things that we did was we put in a motion sensor, so when someone comes up on stage and the lighting is turned off, that a strobe light will go on and let people know from the street that there's misuse happening. Maybe in a phase 2, we would consider looking at some type of fencing, but we were really trying to stay within our budget and get the project repaired at this point.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I guess I would first like to say, thank you for really progressing so many projects so well. There's a lot that goes on that we don't hear about every month, but it's good to hear about it periodically. I appreciate that there's sort of a mix of, I would call them kind of the showcase projects, the bandstand, the gazebo, but also, I think, to my mind, more importantly, the neighborhood projects, the Parque de los Niños, East Side, Louise Lowry. That's been an important one for me personally, just because it really impacts a community, that doesn't always have as many options. And I think it's important that we aggressively seek the funding for the neighborhood projects as much as the showcase projects, though I know that the showcase projects can be easier to get outside funding for sometimes in the community. I guess one of the things that I know has been a bit of a, I don't know if surprise is the right word, but uncomfortable reality has been what's been happening with bidding. And certainly Director Zachary was talking about that with the band shell here recently. I mean, consistently, are you seeing a consistent percentage increase in bids, and how is that impacting your ability to get projects done? I mean, the obvious is going to make it harder, but in terms of the funding you have and the funding you need, at what point are you at a stopping point with all of this?
Chair McGill, that's a difficult question. I can tell you what we saw with the band shell. We
put that back out to bid and gave it a little bit more time and changed the bid requirements slightly to make it a little easier to construct. I think we've found that flexibility helps. Changing our timing helps reduce bids. Bidding the projects a little longer, but we've definitely seen an escalation, which we've seen at the supermarket. It's the same thing. We're seeing it in bids as well. And it's more of a escalation than what we had planned for when we get our construction estimates. So we're trying to either value engineer the projects and see what we can do to minimize costs, or hopefully, bid projects multiple times and try to be flexible as we can with timing or different materials.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, that's tough. Anybody have any other questions? All right, well, thank you all. It's great hearing from you, great seeing it's always good to see the faces behind the hard work that gets done. Yeah, we don't get to do that enough, so appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, Chair.
And with that, we have no old business, and I see no new business. So I believe we may adjourn. See you all next month. Thank you very much.